Good morning, class. I hope you are all doing good. We thank God for blessing us with another day. That's excellent. And you are welcome to today's lessons. Good. You remember what we learned last week. We learned something about clauses. And we said that clause has two main parts. We have the main clause and the subordinate clause. Remember that we said that the main clause makes meaning, and therefore we can consider that to be a sentence. On the other hand, the subordinate clause cannot stand on its own and will therefore depend on the other part of the sentence to make it meaningful or complete. That is why we say it is subordinate. And as it is subordinate, it is also called dependent clause. Dependent clause. While the main clause is called independent clause. Good. But remember that we said the clauses that we are going to treat is basically going to be based on the subordinate or the dependent clauses. And for that reason, we have various aspects such as noun clause, adjective clause, and adverb clause. So today, our emphasis is going to be based on noun clauses. So we are going to look at noun clauses and their functions. Good. So, as the name implies, the noun clause does the work of a noun. It does the work of a noun. And how then do you identify a noun clause in a group of words, in a sentence? Good. A noun clause is introduced by any of the following words. A noun clause can begin with who, why, what, how, whatever, whoever, whichever, when, etc., etc. Good. So if you see any group of words that begins with any of these, which is underlined as a clause, then it gives you a clue that it is a noun clause. I'm not saying emphatically that it is a noun clause, because there are other clauses that can begin with such kind of words. Adjective clause, for example, can begin with which, who, and that. So in that sense, how then do you know as to whether this is a noun clause or adjective clause? That is why I'm saying that those introductory words are just to give you a clue. On the other hand, there are other ways by which you can use to identify that a group of words is a noun clause. This is because when you replace either who or what with the underlined group of words, which is considered to be the noun clause, the sentence remains meaningful. The sentence remains meaningful. So if you replace it with who or what and it becomes meaningful, it tells you that truly this is a noun clause and not adverb clause or adjective clause. Let us look at this example. That's Kojo stole the bag, surprised everyone. Good. With what we have on the board, that Kojo stole the bag, surprised everyone. And we have that Kojo stole the bag underlined. So since that Kojo stole the bag is underlined, we will consider this to be a noun clause. Why is it a noun clause? It is a noun clause in the sense that at least we have Kojo in it, which we can consider to be a noun. It also begins with that, and we said that noun clauses begin with that. Good. Then it is a clause because it contains finite verb, and that is a subject and a verb. So Kojo is the subject, stole is the verb, and that makes it a clause. So every clause must have subject and a verb. Every clause must have subject and a verb in it in order to consider it as a clause. So like I said earlier, you cannot only dwell on the introductory word that to conclude that this is a noun clause, but go a step further and replace the underlying group of words with who or what. And when you do that and it becomes meaningful, it really buttresses the fact that it is a noun clause. For example, what surprised everyone? What surprised everyone? It makes sense, and therefore with that we can conclude that it is a noun clause. Very good. Now, after you have identified that this is a noun clause, the next step is what does it function in the sentence? So, noun clauses have 5 functions. Noun clauses have 5 functions. So, we are going to look at some of the functions of nouns. Functions of noun clauses. So 1, we have subjects of a verb. 2, objects of a verb. 3, complements of a verb. 4, objects of preposition. And finally, 5, in apposition to a noun. These are the functions of nouns. It is also interesting to note that we can also have object of indirect object function. We may also have indirect object function, whilst we have object of a verb. Good. So what we are going to do is to take the functions one after the other, and with some examples, look at how these things are determined. So now we'll begin with the subject function. When we say a noun functions as subject, then for sure it is the subject that is underlined. It is the subject that is underlined. And always it must precede the verb. That is to say, it must come before the verb in question. So when you have a group of words which you can really confirm that it is a noun clause, and the noun clause comes before the main verb in the sentence, then it functions as subject to that particular verb. Let us look at the following examples. That the judge collects bribe is no longer a secret. That the judge collects bribe is no longer a secret. If you consider this, we get to know that the clause here is that the judge collects bribes. Good. If you look at that the judge collects bribes, you realize that the subject in the sentence is the judge. The judge is the subject. And since the judge is a subject, it forms part of the clause. And since it also begins with that, we say it is a noun clause. Not only that, like we said, we can replace it with who or what. So, in this sense, let's look at this. What is no longer a secret? It becomes meaningful. And with that, it confirms that it is a noun clause. And like I also said, when the group of words that is considered to be the noun clause is placed before the verb, then it functions as subject. As it is a subject, that is also what? Underlined. So which verb is it placed before? And that is. So we say the function is subject of the verb is. And is placed in inverted commas. Good. Let us have another example. That Kofi beats Amma shocked the teacher. And we have the clause underlined as that Kofi beats Amma. It is a clause because we have Kofi as the subject, beat as the verb. So like we said, a clause must have subject and a verb. What clause is this? It is a noun clause because it is dominated by nouns. Kofi, Amma. And it also begins with that. And when we replace the clause with who or what, it also becomes meaningful. So, what shocked the teacher? Since it is meaningful, we conclude that it is a noun clause. If this is a noun clause, what then is the function? We realize that the subject, that is Kofi, is underlined. And the clause is also placed before the verb, that is shocked. And so since it precedes the verb shocked, we say that it is subject of the verb shocked. And like I said, it is placed in inverted commas. Good. The next function is object of a verb. Good. If we say the subject is underlined and therefore it is subject function, then automatically we will say that when the object forms part of the clause, then it is going to be object function. And in that sense, it must come after the verb. When it is placed before it, it is subject. When it ends or it comes after the verb, it is object function. Let us look at the following examples. We saw the woman who owns that big shop. Good. So we have who owns that big shop underlined. We saw the woman who owns that big shop. So in that sense, we realize that we can ask the question, we saw who? We saw who? And the answer is the woman who owns that big shop. In that sense, since the clause is coming after the verb, we then conclude that it is objects of the verb saw. Object of the verb saw. Let us have another example. The doctor saw what I did. The doctor saw what I did. Then, the underlying group of words is what I did. It is a clause, and to be precise, a noun clause, because it begins with what. It also contains a finite verb, that is I and did. Good. So in that sense, what clause is this? The doctor saw what? The doctor saw what? And with this in mind, we can confirm that it is a noun clause. It is a noun clause. Good. If it's a noun clause, what then is a function? And since it is placed after saw, then we say that it is function as object of the verb saw. So, object of the verb saw. And remember to put saw in inverted commas. Good. Good. So far we have looked at two functions, subject function and object function. So this is where we will bring today's lesson to an end, and we continue with the remaining functions in our next lessons. So don't forget that we said that a clause must have a finite verb, and that is the presence of subject and a verb. And noun clauses begin with certain kind of words like who, what, that, why, and so on and so forth. And we can replace the clause with who or what in order to get or confirm that it is a noun clause. And with the function, when the subject or the clause comes before the verb, it is subject function. When the clause comes after the verb, it is object function. Good. So if you go to the net, as usual, go to the Internet Study Mate and you find the notes there and you copy. After which you have some exercises to lay hands on. Goodbye.